everyone, here I'm back with a video lecture, and today we are going to discuss the planning a qualitative movement. So, before starting or conducting any of the qualitative analysis, you have to effectively plan a qualitative analysis, like how you can perform that. Okay, so this is a crucial step for performing any of the qualitative analysis on any human movement, or you can say the athlete's analysis. Okay, so, as a physical therapist, as a coach, as a biomechanist, you have to ensure that you can take accurate evaluation for the better outcomes for their clients or athletes. Okay. So, importance of planning is basically if we can just say like that even the simplest qualitative analysis can give us a wrong or incomplete information if it's done without proper planning. So remember, planning is very crucial step for performing any, even the simplest qualitative analysis. So you know that qualitative analysis is basically depending on the quality of the movement, not depending on the any quantity, or you can just add numbers on them. You can just say what type of jump is this, how good the jump is basically that type of qualities. So as the movement skill becomes more complex or the analysis more detailed, the need for planning also increases. Okay, so starting with the right question is very important. Okay, so before like starting any of the observation, ask yourself what is the goal of this analysis. Okay, as a physical therapist you have to ensure that what type of analysis you have to perform. Okay, so you need to decide the goal. Okay, if you have a patient, for instance, for example, if you have a patient with a knee surgery or post knee surgery, you need to understand what is the major goal we have to decide for this patient. Has the post knee surgery patient's gait normalized? Okay, this is maybe the goal. Or you can say that maybe their pain is the first issue you need to get take care of. Okay, so this is majorly the example that what type of goal or what type of goal you have to decide before starting any of the analysis, even as a physical therapist, as a coach, as a biomechanist, whatever you are. So biomechanics is basically not only depending on the patient, but also you know that on the sports athletes or some kind of gamers as well. So even not only patients, not only athletes, the normal human beings. Okay, the workers who work on their desk all day, or you can say that the workers who are the working in office like 9 to 5 jobs. So these are also included in this category. So maybe they have any wrist pain, or you have to understand, you have to find a cause of that wrist pain. So your goal there was to find the cause of the wrist pain. Okay, so majorly you have to decide any of the goal before starting any of the analysis. So having specific question helps you focus on your observation in a better way. Okay, so first you need to create a question like whatever you want to set. Okay, like creating a criteria sheet, checklist ahead of a time is a great way. Okay, so to narrow down your attention to the critical elements of the moment, because you have to remember that your ability to ask the right question is basically depending on your understanding of biomechanics. So it is very important as a physical therapy student, as a physical therapist, as a doctor, you need to understand like what type of question you have to ask yourself, and then you need to create a checklist to complete that question's answer. You need to find the answer of that question. So now what was happening here is in your book, like there are multiple things, and I have told you that the first thing is to find the identify the interest of the question. Okay. So need to take care of that complexity, or you need to ask the questions like what kind of, and I have discussed these examples so I can highlight them on your book so you can understand that, because I am majorly the materials taken from more major materials taken from this book, so we have to understand like in this way. Okay, other than that, choose the right viewing perspective. That means from where you will observe the movement, you need to find that angle. you need to plan that angle, that what is the best plane or what is the best movement I have to identify in what plane, in what view, maybe the side view, the rear view, or any of the view, or multi-planar movements required like multiple perspectives like top views, side views to get the full pictures. I can give you a very simple example that in sports you have seen that sometimes a normal person or the normal umpire cannot basically find out the issue in the in that movement or in that goal or whatever you can say. So they can ask for their inside views, that they can give the cameras to authorities to check for the views like top view, side view, the rear views, to get the full picture. Okay, so this is the major example, as you know that the multi-planar movements required. But as a physical therapist, you can also decide that if you can just see from one view to understand any of the thing. Like for the one plane, you can say that the cycling leg, so you can just decide like I have to see from the side so that I can understand what kind of movement the person can perform when he is performing the cycling. So what type of movement is occur in their leg, or is this the correct biomechanics of that leg movement, you need to just say that. So second point was the, basically first we have discussed the importance, like what are the basics or first interest, the find the interest. Second one was the formulating any of the questions. Okay, you need to find or formulate any of the questions. Sorry, we have just didn't highlight this. Okay, formulated by any of the questions, you can just formulate any questions. Third one was choosing the view. Okay, what kind of view basically uh, have to choose to identify that movement is also very important, as we have discussed. So you need to understand this, like view is also a very important component in the qualitative analysis. Now the next thing is basically deciding on viewing distance. Okay, distance is also very important, as you know that if you can see only from the close-up views, you might not find some kind of issues. That's why, as a physical therapist, you have discussed this in your classes, in your professors have told you that you have to observe the patient starting from the door. Okay, when they enter from the door, you need to observe their gait, their body language, everything you need to find out from the far away. So you just don't ask again for patient to move from there to there. So because this is the subconscious way of finding, because patient is already don't know you are observing him, so you can just distance from, you can just observe the patient from the distance. Okay, other than that is basically the close-up views are also very important, like some kind of for instance, you can take an example of the foot mechanics. You need to find any of the small joint movements, so you can just look at the close-up views of that patient. Observing how a player moves across a whole court, you need a elevated or the distant view or the far view. So that is given you the better watch. So always match your distance to the details so you want to catch. So deciding on viewing distance is also very important point. The fifth one was the observing the multiple trials. Okay, we can just scroll it down so we can just find out. Okay. Okay, what we are saying? Okay, distance is also done. Okay, now you have to observe from the multiple trials. Like you need to, a single performance maybe won't give you the full story, especially for the beginners. As a beginner analyst, you need to understand the single performance cannot give you the understanding of the full story. So skilled athletes might show minor variation between attempts. So you need to be careful in every attempt to understand what kind of issue is patient or athlete is suffering from. But a child learning to run may do something completely different each time. So that is basically the normal. So you need to understand that a child cannot perform the running or the standing movement every time in the same way, because he is just adapting to that environment. Not that is his normal pattern. Okay, that is not anything abnormal. So you need to understand that what is you are going to observe and what is basically happening there. So the more inconsistent the performer is, the more repetitions you need to watch for the reliable analysis. Remember, if the performer is inconsistent, you need more repetitions to basically understand the patient's analysis. Okay, the now check for the okay, we have discussed the topic for the analysis or the trials or execution of the trials. I have highlighting major points here. So you need to find the important point from this. Okay. The next one was the consider attire and the environment. Okay, remember that. Think about the visual clarity of what you are watching. Loose clothing can hide important body movements. So basically, in research settings, usually the minimal attire is common, but due to certain religious, ethnic, or you can say that some kind of other things, maybe this is not very common. You cannot expose the patient too much, you cannot expose athlete too much. So for that purposes, you need to take care of patient's clothing, well fitted clothes with good lighting, non-distracting background with contrasting colors. So you need to ensure that everything is on point, so you have the easy to spot the difference between their movements or difference between their any of the abnormalities that is present here. Okay, next one was the use of video cameras. Let's because recording is very important, and in these days, this is the major key factor you need to take care of. Movements are very fast. Relying on your eyes alone is not basically practical. That's where video recording becomes invaluable. It allows basically the slow motion playbacks. Okay, the frame by frame analysis. You need to see that you can just slow the movement down and just check the issue there. You can also the frame to frame analysis, like you can also check for the other views as well. You can just put cameras on all the sides of the patient or the athlete, and you can just analysis, you can just analyze the movement. But be cautious. The presence of a camera might alter the performer behavior. Okay, so this is the very important thing. Okay, and you have to remain because the athlete can get so self conscious because he see that he is getting recorded. So you need to understand this technique carefully. You need to hide that concept from your patient. You need to hide that technique. Or you can say you need to hide that camera from your athlete. But in patient cases, you cannot just hide because there is some ethical, or you can say that also you can say that this is not in the ethics of as a doctor for you to hide the camera from your patient. So you need to tell sometimes your patients, or you can just tell perform after performing the movement that I have recorded your movement, can I visualize this? You can just ask for the permission, or you can just delete if patient cannot give you the authority of that. So you need to understand every single concept with consciously, because maybe there are certain factors that is affecting you as a physical therapist as well. So proper analysis is very important. Plan your analysis, make the specific questions, basically checklist sheets, or you can say that the observation, right perspective or distance, multiple performance, the attire, lighting, and background needs to be important, and the video tools are very important. So maybe this is all for this concept. So we can just highlight these all as well. So you can just find them out here. Okay. So this is all for today. See you next time and bye bye. Hope you can get everything. If you have any query, you can ask. Bye bye.